everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Gridiron Review alongside Bill Wagner wearing his Glen Burnie Gophers red today. I'm Pete Medhurst. It's great to have you with us here for another edition of the Gridiron Review. Bill, as always, when Old Mill and Arundel get together, you know teams are going to be well coached. You know it's going to be a good game. But here in this day and age of everybody spreading the football field all over the place, exotic 7-on-7 based offenses and all this other stuff, here's what you appreciate about the Old Mill Patriots who've won 22 regular season games in a row, Bill. You know what they do?
Run it down your throat.
They just come to the line of scrimmage and punch you in the mouth, legally, on the football perspective. Cyrus Gay goes for over 200 yards on 33 carries and 4 scores as Old Mill wins 42-21. And the beauty of what Old Mill does, I equate it to almost what Navy does on the college level. It's very simple football from Old Mill. They just come up to the line of scrimmage. They basically get a bullhorn out and go, "We're running the football." And they run it, and at the end of the game, you lose.
Yep. And Cyrus, I love what he said after the game. Ground and pound, baby. He said, get behind that line, and you got to give credit to the offensive line. Old Mill's offensive line has been outstanding for a number of years. You know, I picked Arundel in this, and I'm kind of kicking myself because early returns, Arundel's defense had not really stopped anyone. They had played a lot of high-scoring games, and you kind of had a feeling that might come back to haunt them. And, you know, what else Old Mill does, especially when you're playing Arundel, ground and pound means keeping Arundel's high-powered offense off the field. Because Ryan Sedgwick had some success when he had the ball, threw for about 240 and 3 TDs. So, but keeping them off the field, you know, fewer possessions, that's the key against a team like Arundel.
And, of course, now in the Class 4A, Chopticon from the SMAC has moved in here.
Chopticon suddenly.
Undefeated, number 3 right now. North Point already lost to Calvert on their schedule one time. So,
what do you think of Chopticon competition?
Well, I mean, you can't. It doesn't matter what you play in terms of competition. If you go undefeated, you're going to beat out one of the Anne Arundel County one-loss teams. It really comes down to that. Now, if you're a SMAC fan, or I should say an Anne Arundel County fan, you're hoping that somebody in the SMAC can knock off Chopticon, even if it's North Point in a head-to-head battle, because you're going to accrue more points because you're playing more 4A teams than those teams are in the SMAC. So any tie in terms of record, any 9-1 versus 9-1 is usually going to go an Anne Arundel County team's way in that situation. One of the other teams in Anne Arundel County off to a great start, the Annapolis Panthers. Little struggle the other night with South River for a little while, but Justin Williams and company pulling away for a 44-20 win. Justin Williams, 13 of 21 in the game for the Panthers in that one. And what was impressive to me here is South River played well early in the game, Bill, and Annapolis did not lose focus. So therefore, in the fourth quarter, they did not give South River a chance to win and steal the football game from them. Panthers got down to business, did what they had to do to remain undefeated.
I think we're going to have to go look at the record book soon because this is going to turn out, I think, to be one of the most successful seasons in Annapolis since perhaps Roy Brown was the head coach.
Yeah,
we're going back to the Roy Brown era, and because since then you had Dale Castro and Brian Brown, and there may have been another coach in there that I can't remember. But Nick Good-Malloy, this guy's doing a good job. He's a good young coach. A very bright young coach, and he has got the Panthers playing good ball. They've got some athletes. They've got some weapons on both sides of the ball. And now we're looking at Annapolis Old Mill could be the big showdown of the year. And, you know, what you mentioned about Arundel is true. They may not be able to afford another loss at this point if they want to make the playoffs.
Right. I think 3 of the teams in Anne Arundel County are probably still going to get in if you're 1 loss or better. But you get down into 8-2 territory right now with Chopticon's emergence in the SMAC, and you're really putting yourself at risk in terms of the schedule. But the thing is right now, if you look at it, I mean, it's really a haves and a have-nots in Anne Arundel County. There's a clear separation right now. The one team I think you got to talk about a little bit, and not many details were available on their game this past weekend, but maybe instead of wondering about what was wrong with Meade in that opener, maybe we're just like, wow, Annapolis is really good. Because since then, Meade has picked themselves back up.
Yes, they have.
They are 3-1 after a 34-16 win over Northeast. So now you've got a Meade team that is accruing wins. So if you beat Meade like Annapolis has, it's going to be bonus points for you. We know how important those bonus points then become. So the more teams, everybody in 4A is rooting for everybody else to get wins because you want bonus points and things of that nature. Nice to see Meade bounce back with 3 straight wins now after that disheartening opening loss to the Panthers in that game. And Glen Burnie, another team that's bounced back here, 2-2 now after a 35-11 win over Chesapeake this past weekend. Shamal Jones, 89 yards. 2 touchdowns, 134 yards rush, 34 yards on the ground, and another 62 yards on the ground. Eric Woodson was missing some players in that game, But boy, did they shuffle some things around and got a nice win against the Chesapeake team right now that's really struggling offensively.
Right. Well, you mentioned my Glen Burnie Red. That's because they've won 2 in a row. And Coach Woodson, he said kind of vague. He said we had some real studs were not available to us for the first couple games, and now they're back. Could be a academic issue. I don't know. Maybe injuries, but they've got things going, and he's done a good job there. And you do have to give the Meade coaching staff credit. They put that bad Annapolis loss behind them and have turned things around quickly. And as you look at that next tier, it's Old Mill, Arundel, Annapolis, and then Broadneck, Meade, Glen Burnie, perhaps. Who's in that next? Exactly, Severna Park with a big win.
Yeah, Severna Park's been much more competitive this year as well. Stephen Gicelli with 2 touchdowns, 41-20. They get by the Bulldogs down at Harwood on a homecoming Saturday game in that one. Also, on the private school side, Boys Latin beat St. Mary's 20-13. St. Albans beat Severn 17-14. AACS knocked off FCA from the Eastern Shore of Delaware by a count of 40-7. And Spalding
rolled
with a
over
really
Avalon.
nice win over Avalon. Avalon team came in with a little bit of a solid reputation, and Spalding mauled them. Julius Chestnut with 99 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, and Evan Fochtman with 6 carries for 120 yards in that game. And we've got some great A-conference games coming up now for Spalding over the next few weeks. Really going to be interesting to see the Cavaliers now chase what right now is a really competitive A-conference. For the first time in a while, you really look at the whole league and you think that a lot of teams actually have a chance in this thing.
All right, well, with Gilman, all the shakeup there with Biff Pogge leaving and his coaching staff going down to St. Francis, so Gilman isn't quite what Gilman's been. McDonough's still good. Don D'Amico's been there a long time doing a great job. Rich Holzer has really picked things up at Mount St. Joe. It's wide open, and I do believe that Spalding is right there in the mix. I see Spalding as a contender in this league. It used to be, they only got into the A-Conference a few years back, and early on, if they won a few games, you're like, wow, that's a great win for Spalding. They are now a player. They are a contender in this league. Definitely have the ability to win the championship.
And Kyle Schmidt's club getting ready to embark on a really good portion of their schedule. So watch out for Spalding's games over the next couple of weeks if you're looking to find some good football out there. On the youth league side this week, up in the varsity national division, we had a couple of real barn burners. SRYA knocking off Powell by a score of 13-12. Davidsonville stopping a 2-point conversion by Cape to win 22-20. In the 100-pound level, Old Mill beat SRYA 7-0, and a great one. Rebels beat SAC by a score of 14-13, and at least so far so good. Bill, no behavioral issues on the youth league football sidelines this weekend.
I got stuck on an off-ramp last week and couldn't make the show. I was wondering how the zero tolerance meeting went at Recreation and Parks a few weeks back.
Look, and you can even tell, especially when you look at some of the adults and the way they behave on the big message board that they have, which talks a lot of good stuff about youth league football, but it also brings out the worst in some of the parents. Some of the
that's what Rick Anthony said. That's where a lot of this starts, is on the
some of the silly things that they say. There's one particular parent that if you follow the message board, anytime there's talk about a rule, this is a parent that always reacts, oh, this is silly and things of this nature. No, it's not silly, because if we don't have rules and regulations in place, then it becomes organized chaos, and nothing is ever accomplished when we have organized chaos out there. As evidence, look at those 4 games I just talked about. Great football games is about what the kids are doing on Saturday.
That's exactly right.
And that's what it's all about. When Bill and I come back, he and I are headed to Colorado Springs this week as Navy and Air Force will meet as undefeateds. We'll talk about that game and more when we come back on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back to the Gridiron Review. College is time now. Bill and I will be heading out to Colorado Springs for our annual pilgrimage, where they try to fake us out with a sign that says, you are at 5,280 feet. You will become overcome by the altitude. Literally, as you walk down the tunnel, there's this big sign that says it. And, well, Bill, quite frankly, walking up the steps to the press box, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack multiple times. So the altitude is something for me, but not for highly trained athletes like the ones at the Naval Academy who will get together with Air Force. And, Bill, this rivalry is always fun. It's quite nasty, to be honest with you. Air Force had a couple of plays this past week, which shows you they had one guy get ejected for targeting one of their most important players.
Weston Steelhand.
Yeah, their safety. So he'll be out for the first half of the game. One of their other guys threw a shoulder at a Utah State player as he was trying to run back to his position, knocked him out for a play. The referees didn't see that. The camera did. Remember, kids, the camera never lies, okay? Your film doesn't lie. Your film shows you either as a good player or a bad player. It's that simple. But we've seen a lot of chippiness in this rivalry, and the key to me is which team can walk away from the chippiness, not give away the free 15 yards, because these games have been so close, the yardage is so hard fought for. It's one mistake like that can make the difference in a game in terms of field position.
Absolutely. Well, you were talking about Air Force. I remember the time they had given Keenan Reynolds the business underneath the pile. Remember that a few years back?
Ron Cherry made the call.
That's right. And the other thing in this rivalry is special teams. It seems, especially out in Colorado Springs, it always seems as though a special teams play is crucial. Remember a few years back when Navy blocked a punt and had a couple.
Blocked two of them, actually.
That's right, 2 in one game. And then there's been missed field goals that have cost the Mids at times. So I feel, as you mentioned, in a close game, mistakes, penalties, and special teams.
And quite frankly, when you think about it, in the last few years, especially in the triple option era, when Navy has lost, it's been basically their own undoing.
Yes.
2 years ago in Colorado Springs, they ran it down Air Force's throat in the first half, but in the second half, put the ball on the ground and did not execute, and all of a sudden Air Force able to pull away for a victory. Mids, of course, winning last year in the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy competition. It's one of the reasons why they've got one of these big fat rings right here. What do they have to do to make sure they take step one to renewing this trophy this week?
I have always found that when Navy has success with the fullback against Air Force, it's crucial. It kind of, for some reason in this game, because it's such a line them up and smack each other in the mouth type of game, getting that fullback dive established to me is always key. And so I think that's going to be crucial. And, as you said, no penalties, no turnovers, the things that really hurt in a tight game that can come back to haunt you. Navy, I was talking to Coach Nia Matalolo on the American Athletic Conference teleconference today, and they've got the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is in the building, Ricketts Hall. It normally lives over in the rotunda of Bancroft Hall, which is where all the midshipmen's dormitories are, and they bring it over to the building as a reminder, this is what we're playing for, boys.
You had a chance to talk with Dan O'Brien this week, an interesting story in the Sunday edition of the Capitol. His dad, Tom, of course, Naval Academy grad, well-respected and very successful college football coach. What was it like to talk to two guys like that, especially where the son now is, if you talk to people in coaching circles, there are a lot of people that really, really think Dan O'Brien is destined for some really good things in this profession, and so far so good as a secondary coach at Navy.
Right. Well, Ken Niumatalolo called him a rising star, said he will be a defensive coordinator very soon. I have a funny feeling that, if Dale Pearson retires someday, that he's hoping Dan O'Brien would be the successor, but we may not be able to keep Dan O'Brien at Annapolis for very long if he gets an opportunity elsewhere as a DC. But what I found is that there's a lot of the father has rubbed off on the son. Tom O'Brien was a very stoic, he's a military guy. He reached the rank of major in the Marine Corps. But as his son said, my dad was always calm, cool, and collected on the sideline. You never saw him get frazzled or excited. He was not a yeller or a screamer, and Dan is that way as well. And it's just interesting, how growing up with a coach has rubbed off. I don't think Dan O'Brien even realized what he was picking up over the course of his youth, going to practices, riding into a recruiting trip with his father and just talking football. A lot of that. And something I wasn't able to use it in the article, but Tom O'Brien said about his son Dan, he sees things. And it's true. I remember last year at the Military Bowl, they said that Dan O'Brien was up in the press box calling Pittsburgh's plays before they ran them. And that's what Tom O'Brien says. He sees some things. And got to give Tom O'Brien credit because he helped mold his son's career. He told him, he got him in with some incredible people.
Yeah, no question.
Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, even Tim Murphy at Harvard, who's been a great coach at Harvard for a long time. He surrounded him with really good people, and that's how Dan O'Brien developed.
Meanwhile, Maryland going to welcome in Purdue in a Big Ten matchup. The Terps off to a terrific start. Had a bye week to do a little self-scout and evaluate and try to rest up quarterback Perry Hills. But with the shoulder injury, certainly questionable for this week for the Terrapins. But, oh, wait, Mr. Pegram waiting to do the deed as he did down at Central Florida for the winning touchdown in overtime. DJ Durkin could not have asked for a better start at the University of Maryland.
Right. DJ's doing a great job, and this is a big one. At home, Maryland Stadium, you got a Big Ten opener. If he could get a win in his Big Ten opener, the confidence. I mean, so much of football, college football, is about gaining momentum, gaining confidence, believing in yourself. Maryland's already started to develop that. That win at Central Florida was huge to be able to pull out an overtime victory. But you beat Purdue in your home opener, or your Big Ten opener, I think it'd be huge.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can lose to Purdue, quite frankly, because Purdue's not very good. I think if you lost to
Maryland
Purdue, I'm just saying though, if you lost to Purdue at home, I think all of a sudden people just say, we played
same old Maryland.
We played Florida International, Howard, and Central Florida. So I think that's the stigma they're fighting this week is the fan that's kind of on the fence. They know Purdue's not very good. They know Purdue's been struggling. They know their coach is on the hot seat, and this is a great opportunity for Maryland. If Maryland's going to be a legitimate contender in that division, because right now, that spot behind Michigan and Ohio State is wide open. Michigan State got drilled by Wisconsin this week.
Penn State got drilled.
Penn State is not that good.
No.
James Franklin could be on hot seat at Penn State.
Yes,
too,
he could be.
It's just not working there.
No, they expect a lot more success than what he has brought them.
I would hire P.J. Fleck from Western Michigan. If I were Penn State alums, I would write your congressman and your athletic director and everything and get P.J. Fleck there to Penn State. But this is a game Maryland, quite frankly, has to go out and win. The question is who's going to be playing the quarterback. They've got a stable of running backs right now, a mile wide.
All right, Wes Brown is back.
Yeah, add him to the mix as well. But my man, go Lorenzo Harrison from DeMatha, the freshman, emerging as
legit.
a good running back for the Terps. When we come back, hey, Skins and Ravens both find victories. That doesn't happen too much. We'll talk about that when we return on the Gridiron Review. Well, every time when you look around on Fridays in Anne Arundel County, it's a Purple Friday. I'm happy to report I don't own any purple clothing.
So burgundy only.
That takes me out of the mix. But the Ravens are 3-0, Bill, and it doesn't matter how you get to 3-0. They've played three of the worst teams in the league. In fact, until Buffalo upset Arizona this week, none of the teams had a victory as of yet. But for the Ravens, as you're trying to sort some things out right now, you are 3-0 in a division where everybody else is behind you in terms of the math right now. And that's all that matters for Baltimore. Give yourself a chance on the big stage come January. Yesterday, Justin Tucker proving why he's one of the best in the league, 54 yards, and he bangs it through, and they beat Jacksonville by a score of 19-17.
All right, well, you said it, Pete. They don't ask how, just how many. And last year, these were the types of games that the Baltimore Ravens were losing. And the other thing you have to say, knock on wood, and no injuries yet, because last year at this time, the Ravens had suffered some serious injuries that would ultimately derail their season. How often does Joe Flacco throw 4 interceptions a game, and he did it 2 weeks in a row? First time the Baltimore Ravens have ever won back-to-back games in which Joe Flacco threw 4 picks. Their running game is non-existent.
They need Kenneth Dixon back from injury. That's
right.
the guy they're waiting on.
Maybe give Ray Rice a call at this point. I mean, anybody. Good Lord. But the running game is not there, and that's part of what's putting Flacco under pressure is its obvious passing situations. Now, to Joe's credit, 21 in a row.
Yeah.
He completed 21 passes in a row, which is pretty good. Ravens will get better, but they're not going to beat a lot of really good teams playing the way they have been.
I hope you don't have a lot of women for neighbors. So
Ray Rice deserves a second chance. Good Lord. His wife gave him a second chance.
Right, but the problem to me for Ray Rice was not the assault on his wife. I mean,
in fact, it was on video.
But he tailed off as a player. He was not much of a player at the time because, trust me, Hoss, if you can play, somebody's going to give you a second chance.
Right,
they're going to beat your door down to get a second chance.
Right, like they did in Dallas with another abuser.
Well, they've got like 4 of them on that team that got suspended. None of them are back as of yet. But the Redskins, meanwhile, went to New York and showed some intestinal fortitude. Dustin Hopkins, my man, 5 field goals. And the Redskins beat the Giants by a score of 29-27. And Kirk Cousins said it best. We had to be patient despite being behind in that game. They were, and eventually they make enough plays. Surprisingly, with all the injuries they incurred in that game, offensively they moved Trent Williams down to guard, put Ty Nsekhe, who's like the size of a mobile home at left tackle. They ran the ball down the Giants' throat on that last drive to kick the game-winning field goal in that one. A lot of injuries for Washington, a lot of character on that field yesterday.
Oh, they needed this win. This was must-win territory. You can't go down 0-3 and expect to make the playoffs. And as you mentioned, the same with the Redskins as the Ravens, the running game had been non-existent. So that was a huge factor coming out of that is to see the Redskins run the ball, especially as you mentioned on that last drive. The Giants couldn't stop them. They lined up and played smash mouth, took time off the clock. Huge win for the Skins, and injuries were a little bit costly though. D'Angelo Hall,
torn ACL, done for the year.
Veteran safety. Yep. And as you mentioned, Rashad Breeland, we don't know what his status is. Some hits in the secondary, which is tough.
No doubt about that. Big fake punt, Tressway to Quentin Dunbar, who was a former wide receiver, now playing corner, and likely steps in for Rashad Breeland at the one cornerback spot for Washington. I thought the adjustments they made on the offensive line were critical, though. Moving Trent Williams down to guard turned out to be a stroke of genius by Jay Gruden and the boy wonder Sean McVay, who calls the plays for Washington.
You think they're going to stick it with that?
If Corey Lichtensteiger can't go, I think maybe you do look at going that way, because that might be your best combination right now.
Right. And
Trent Williams getting paid no matter what.
Right.
He can play guard, center, tackle.
You find this stuff out by accident sometimes. I mean,
you do.
out of necessity, and then all of a sudden you go, wow, that's a pretty good look for us.
Yeah. If you can get Matt Jones to run for 70 or 75 yards a game, that's enough to keep Kirk Cousins and that great passing offense going. They've got to be able to finish drives, though, in the red zone. The Cleveland Browns up next for the Redskins, of course, without RG3, the matchup everybody was waiting for. That'll do it for our show this week. Appreciate you stopping by. As always, you can, of course, watch us online. Go to the Anne Arundel County Parks and Recreation page for the link information there as well as our Facebook page. Just search Anne Arundel County Gridiron Review. Leave a comment and any other pertinent information from games during the course of the weekend. Be glad to share with the public right here on the Gridiron Review. For Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. We'll see you next week on the Gridiron Review.